not be the same. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Should Russia choose to deploy nuclear weapons, it is likely that a significant number of its targets would be located within the expansive 3.797 million square miles, or 9.834 million square kilometers, that constitute the United States. This preference stems from the US's robust military strength, making it the sole nation with a nuclear arsenal comparable to that of Russia. Unfortunately, there are very few places in the United States that would be safe from destruction if Russia launched a nuclear attack. It would be challenging for the US to prevent these missiles from hitting their targets due to their overwhelming numbers. New information points to some of the first areas that could be hit by Russian nukes. The big question is, would you be safe? Let's jump right in and talk about the places Russia might target. But before we do that, let's understand how we know who might be in danger. This year, Putin said Russia won't follow the New START nuclear weapons treaty anymore. This treaty, made in 2011, aimed to reduce nuclear weapons worldwide. Now that Putin isn't sticking to it, Russia can increase its stockpile of 5,889 nukes. Right now, only 1,588 of these nuclear weapons are active, but if Putin is getting ready for nuclear war, this might change fast. Even with just over 1,500 active nuclear warheads, Russia could destroy every US and NATO target globally.
И при угрозе территориальной целостности нашей страны, для защиты России и нашего народа, мы, безусловно, используем все имеющиеся в нашем распоряжении средства. Это не блеф.
That's why when Putin said, "To defend Russia, we will use all weapons at our disposal," this is not a bluff. It worried the West a lot. Russia currently has the most nuclear weapons globally, with the United States closely behind with around 5,244 nukes. It's important to note that the US is trying to decrease its number of nuclear warheads, while many other countries like Russia are increasing their stockpiles. Guessing which places might get targeted is easier for some locations than others. But if we pay attention to what Putin has said before, he pretty much told us where the nukes could be headed. Once, while talking to the Russian people on TV, Putin mentioned a superfast missile that could go 5 times quicker than the speed of sound, around 3,836 miles per hour or 6,173 kilometers per hour. He said this missile could carry a nuclear warhead. We're not sure if this weapon is real and working, but when Putin talked about it, he said it might hit the Pentagon, Camp David, Jim Creek Naval Radio Station, Fort Ritchie, and McClellan Air Force Base. If there's a war and Russia decides to use nuclear weapons, they would likely target military sites first. These are places like bases, weapon storage, and important installations. Before getting into big cities and towns, let's look at one of Russia's common nuclear missiles called the RT-2PM Topol. This missile has a power of 800 kilotons, which tells us how strong it is. Later, we'll also talk about what would happen if Russia used even more powerful nuclear weapons. It's important to understand the massive destruction these weapons can cause. Now, let's talk about the Pentagon, a major target for Russia in a potential war. The Pentagon is where the US Department of Defense is headquartered. If Russia were to destroy it, it would seriously harm the command structure of the US military. While it wouldn't completely disable the military, it would create chaos in the country's leadership. The problem is, hitting the Pentagon with a nuclear weapon would also devastate much of Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States. In Washington, D.C., there are about 713,000 people, and in the larger D.C. area, over 6,385,000 people live. If a nuclear bomb goes off over the Pentagon, around 420,000 people would be killed in the initial blast, and an estimated 861,500 people would be injured. The fireball from the explosion would vaporize the Pentagon and everything within a half-mile radius. The blast damage would extend 4 miles out from the center, destroying or severely damaging most of Washington's legislative buildings and monuments. When examining the images of nuclear explosions in this video, it's crucial to understand the significance of the different rings. The innermost circle, closest to the epicenter, represents the area consumed by the fireball, effectively vaporizing anything within it. The bluish ring, the second from the epicenter, signifies the zone where the shockwave and air blast cause serious damage, potentially destroying buildings and creating flying debris that can lead to more casualties. The third, yellowish-colored ring indicates the region where radiation would be so intense that it could cause third-degree burns, with the risk of harmful mutations in people's DNA, potentially leading to cancer. This is also true for all the areas closer to the epicenter. The outermost ring signifies light blast damage, which could still result in fatalities. Anyone within these circles who survived the initial blast would receive a significant dose of radiation, likely leading to death shortly after. Given that the White House is approximately 2.17 miles from the Pentagon, the president would be at risk of being killed by the high-intensity shockwave. However, it's likely that Russia would specifically target the White House with a dedicated nuclear strike. In the event of a nuke hitting the Pentagon, thousands of government officials and their staff would be killed, prompting the government to enter crisis mode. Almost all power would immediately be transferred to the president. If the president were killed, the next person in the line of succession would assume the role of commander-in-chief. The succession order includes the vice president, Speaker of the House, President pro tempore of the Senate, Secretary of State, Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of Defense, and so forth, until a surviving individual can take over. In addition to targeting the U.S. capital, Russia would prioritize the destruction of as many nuclear missile silos as possible to increase its chances of surviving a retaliatory nuclear strike by the U.S. While this strategy wouldn't be completely foolproof due to the vast U.S. nuclear arsenal, numerous early warning systems, and submarines with nuclear missiles in undisclosed locations worldwide, Russia would aim to neutralize as many U.S. Minuteman III ICBM bases as possible in the initial attacks. This would entail striking some remote parts of the U.S. For Russia to stand a chance of survival in the following hours, it would need to target all the Minuteman III ICBM bases in the United States. One such base is Malmstrom Air Force Base in the middle of Montana, which houses around 3,400 military personnel and about 1,000 civilians. However, it is the base's 150 Minutemen III nuclear missiles that would be the primary focus for Russia. While Putin might order several nuclear strikes on high-priority targets, just one would have devastating consequences. Everyone on the base would be killed in the initial blast, along with 15,000 people in the nearby towns of Black Eagle and Great Falls. The number of injured would be around twice as much. The population in the region isn't very dense, so the casualties wouldn't be nearly as high as in a major city, but that is not the objective of hitting Malmstrom Air Force Base. Russia would only be trying to cripple the military installation's ability to launch its Minuteman missiles back at their homeland. Unfortunately, upon detonation, the water flowing through the Missouri River near the blast site would immediately evaporate. The water further upstream would continue to flow and eventually pass through the irradiated landscape around Malmstrom. This water would then carry radioactive particles downstream and eventually into the Mississippi River. For weeks and even months, the contaminated water won't be safe to drink. Wildlife will die of radiation poisoning even if they are hundreds of miles away from the blast site. However, Malmstrom isn't the only military target on Russia's list. A second key military base that Russia would target is Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota. This installation also contains approximately 150 Minuteman missile silos. Minot doesn't have as many staff as Malmstrom, with only 3,200 military personnel and 420 civilian employees. However, the town of Minot itself is more populated than the area around Malmstrom. This means that the number of casualties will be higher when the Nuke detonates. The number of immediate casualties will be 23,300, with another 20,000 people suffering injuries from the air blast of the explosion. This entire region of the country is sparsely populated, so the fallout won't contaminate as many people as in other regions, but again, the goal for these nukes is to render the United States ICBMs in the area inoperable. The final military base that would be a crucial target for Russia is F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming. However, the Minutemen silos under its control are actually spread across Wyoming, Colorado, and Nebraska. This base oversees around 150 missiles with approximately 3,360 military members and around 964 civilians working at the location. Similar to other ICBM missile silos, more than one Russian nuclear warhead would likely be directed towards this area. Even just one strike would result in around 26,600 deaths and 36,380 casualties. The town of Cheyenne would be decimated, and anyone in the vicinity at the time of detonation would likely receive a lethal dose of radiation. In addition to targeting military bases, Russia would launch nuclear strikes at U.S. command and control targets across the country. Some of these locations are well known, while others are not as widely recognized. In fact, you might be living near one and not even be aware of it. One obvious target would be the North American Aerospace Defense Command, or NORAD, at Peterson Air Force Base. Unfortunately, this is just outside of Colorado Springs, a heavily populated area in the state. This means that when a nuke strikes the Air Force Base, it will also decimate much of Colorado Springs. NORAD is a combined organization that includes the United States and Canadian employees who oversee aerospace warning, air sovereignty and protection for Canada, the continental United States, and Alaska. Peterson Air Force Base and the surrounding area employees is home to a large number of military service members and civilians who work at the base. In fact, there are over 8,750 active duty members, 1,325 reservists, 10,200 family members of the military, and 1,900 civilians in the area. This is on top of the over 23,000 veterans. This key target for Russia will cost the lives of over 60,000 people and injure close to 200,000. The eastern portion of Colorado Springs would be decimated, although people in the mountains to the west of the small city could be spared from much of the fallout as the wind would blow radioactive particles further east towards Kansas. Then there is Offutt Air Force Base, just outside of Omaha, Nebraska. This is the headquarters of the United States Strategic Command and would be a very important base for Russia to take out. The U.S. Strategic Command's mission is to deter strategic attack through a safe, secure, effective, and credible global combat capability and, when directed, is ready to prevail in conflict. So, it's pretty obvious why Russia would want to destroy the headquarters of this organization. A nuclear strike on Offutt would result in a significant breach in U.S. defenses, causing immediate and severe casualties. The blast would claim the lives of approximately 40,000 people and leave around 145,000 more injured. This is due to the fact that the area is home to over 32,000 military personnel, civilians, contractors, dependents, and retirees, and Omaha itself has a population of around 500,000. The waters of the Missouri River would rapidly evaporate from the heat, and the incoming water would become irradiated as it flowed toward the Mississippi. Strategic Command operations would be relocated to one of the other 10 combatant command sites in the U.S. to continue preparations for a retaliatory strike. However, by this point, the U.S. would likely have already launched its own nuclear missiles in an attempt to eliminate Russian targets. Another strategic target for Russia would be rural Maine, near the border of Canada, where the VLF transmitter Cutler is located. This station plays a crucial role in transmitting one-way communication to submarines in the U.S. Navy's Atlantic Fleet, capable of reaching both surface and underwater vessels. Operating at 24 kHz with an input power of up to 1.8 megawatts, Cutler can transmit text messages at a low data rate. The base is a prime target for Russia because it is responsible for sending launch codes and orders to U.S. submarines with nuclear capabilities in the Atlantic Ocean. Destroying this base would make it more difficult for US command to communicate with these submarines. The casualties resulting from a nuclear explosion at the VLF transmitter, Cutler, would be minimal due to its remote location. However, the impact on ocean life and coastal ecosystems in the area would be devastating. Cutler and its surroundings would see around 800 casualties from the nuclear blast, given that the town itself has a population of about 500. Similarly, the counterpart to the VLF transmitter Cutler is the Jim Creek Naval Radio Station in Washington State, responsible for transmitting orders to submarines in the Pacific Fleet. It's evident that this facility would be another target for the Kremlin to disable US communication with its submarines off the east coast of Russia. However, like Cutler, the Jim Creek Naval Radio Station is situated in a remote area, resulting in relatively low casualties from the nuclear blast. An estimated 400 people would succumb to the immediate explosion at Jim Creek, with another 10,000 or so sustaining injuries. The surrounding forests would be set ablaze, and depending on weather conditions, the fires could burn for weeks. Survivors would likely flee to the coast, seeking shelter on islands just off the west coast of the state. The United States has an alternative means of communication with its Pacific Fleet through the Lualuale Very Low Frequency, VLF, transmitter in Hawaii, situated about 2,000 miles or 3,200 kilometers from the US mainland. This transmitter has the capability to relay orders to the Pacific Fleet, making it another likely target for Russia. Despite Hawaii's remote location in the Pacific, Russian missiles launched from submarines could still reach its shores. Unlike Cutler and Jim Creek, Lualuale is in a relatively populated area. Oahu, where the transmitter is located, is the most populous island in the Hawaiian chain, with close to 1 million people at any given time. While a portion of them are tourists, Oahu also has a significant permanent population. If the Lualuale VLF transmitter were hit with a nuclear bomb, it would cause devastation to the population on the western part of the island. Those elsewhere on Oahu would likely be exposed to significant radiation, as there would be few places to seek shelter, and ocean breezes could carry radioactive particles and debris across the entire island. The immediate death toll would be around 18,500, with 76,000 more people injured. However, the fact that Oahu is also home to Pearl Harbor and a number of naval installations would mean that this island would likely be hit with several nukes. We've covered key military targets so far, and the casualties from nuclear strikes hitting these locations would likely reach into the hundreds of thousands. But if Russia goes for a nuclear attack, it won't just be military installations in the crosshairs, major cities will be targeted as well. It's too risky for them to leave densely populated urban centers untouched, as sparing large populations could mean facing more American forces in the future. In the aftermath of such strikes, the impact on both military and civilian casualties would be significant, with far-reaching consequences for the affected areas. In the event of a Russian nuclear strike, certain crucial cities would undoubtedly be in the crosshairs from the very start. What makes these potential targets particularly alarming is that the expected casualties would far exceed anything witnessed in the entirety of human history. One of these key cities is New York City, the financial hub not only of the United States but potentially the entire world. Despite its global economic significance, the strategic importance of Manhattan won't deter Russia from considering it a target. The detonation of a nuclear weapon over New York would be nothing short of catastrophic, with devastating consequences for both the city and its global economic influence. If Russia was trying to cripple the United States, it would probably fire a nuke at the financial district in Lower Manhattan. To be fair, it doesn't really matter where a nuke hits in New York City, as the island of Manhattan is only around 13.4 miles long yet, with a population of 1.63 million. Very few people would be able to escape the blast of an 800-kiloton nuke. The consequences of a warhead detonation over New York City would be catastrophic, resulting in an immediate loss of around 1.5 million lives. An additional 3 million people would suffer severe injuries, whether from radiation burns or the collapse of buildings. Considering the total population of all 5 boroughs of New York City is close to 8.5 million, the impact would be extensive. The shockwave, blinding flash of light, and airborne debris would affect every resident in the city. In the densely populated urban center like New York City, the existing medical infrastructure would struggle with overwhelming casualties as major hospitals may be destroyed. Fires and infrastructure damage would impede response and recovery efforts, while the release of an electromagnetic pulse (EMP) would render communication and electronic systems useless, plunging the city into a technological dark age reminiscent of the 1700s. The profound and lasting impact highlights the urgent need to prevent such catastrophic events. However, the impact wouldn't be limited to New York City alone if Russia chose a nuclear attack. The ripple effect of such strikes would reach multiple cities, amplifying the scale of destruction and complicating recovery efforts. The disabling effect on modern technology would exacerbate the already catastrophic consequences, presenting unprecedented challenges for emergency response and recovery on a broad scale. Turning attention to the West Coast, Los Angeles emerges as another potential target. While not as densely populated as New York City, the City of Angels, with its just under 4 million residents, would still face significant death and destruction in the event of a nuclear strike. A detonation would particularly devastate downtown LA, resulting in the annihilation of a substantial area. The grim statistics paint a stark picture. Over 500,000 lives lost and 1.5 million people seriously injured. The impact would extend beyond human casualties to the city's extensive vehicular landscape. According to city records, there are 5,484,606 automobiles, 123,669 motorcycles, and 1,068,213 commercial vehicles in Los Angeles. Those not incinerated by the initial fireball would face further chaos, as blinded drivers could contribute to crashes and vehicles could be propelled across the landscape by the ensuing air blast. The overall toll on Los Angeles would be profound, underscoring the widespread devastation that would accompany a nuclear attack on a major urban center. The city already has water shortages, and the nuclear explosion would only make things worse. Miles of pipes would be rendered useless. What little water storage there was would be destroyed. People would flee the city but would find an inhospitable landscape all around them that was parched of liquid. The coastal winds would blow the radioactive smoke and soot inland, covering everything with irradiated fallout. In the middle of the country, Chicago and its 2.7 million residents would be a target as well. When the nuke detonated over the city, it would kill close to 600,000 people. Although if downtown Chicago ended up being the epicenter of the blast, half of the explosion and shockwave would extend into Lake Michigan, which could save the lives of many to the west of the city. However, even with part of the devastation being over water, over 1 million people would be injured in the blast. The enormity of a possible nuclear conflict becomes painfully clear when we consider the destiny of the 3 most populous cities in the United States: New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, all destined for obliteration. Simultaneously, Washington, D.C., the political hub, would undoubtedly be a prime target, with mushroom clouds rising above military installations transformed into craters. For Russia to effectively cripple the United States in a nuclear war, it would have to fully commit to such devastating strikes. What intensifies this grim scenario is Russia's powerful arsenal, stocked with enough nuclear warheads to repeatedly target major cities, urban areas, and every U.S. military base. The potential for destruction is vast, portraying a bleak image of the widespread devastation that could unfold in the event of a nuclear conflict. The map outlining potential targets across the United States underscores the harsh reality of the catastrophic impact an all-encompassing nuclear strike would have on the nation. So it's clear that no matter where you are in the United States, chances are there would be a Russian nuke coming your way if Putin launched his entire arsenal. But it gets worse. Even if you were far away from all major cities or military targets, the radiation would likely still reach you in the form of fallout, as debris, smoke, and dust are kicked up into the atmosphere by a nuclear explosion. Irradiated particles are carried long distances by the wind and then fall to the ground, contaminating water, food, and the air. So really, the danger zones extend much further than just major cities and military bases if Russia decides to launch nukes at the US. As you can see, people who live pretty much anywhere in the eastern United States will receive an unhealthy dose of radiation, which is really bad news since around 80% of Americans live east of the Mississippi. The reason for that has a lot to do with climate and weather patterns, but that is a discussion for another video. What is important to know is that around 265.6 million people will either be killed, injured, or exposed to radioactive fallout in the United States if Russia attacks with nukes. But what about the rest of the world? We've focused a lot on the United States because Russia could not hope to win a nuclear war without targeting the US and the thousands of nukes in its arsenal. Regardless of what the initial targets of a Russian nuclear attack were, mutually assured destruction is inevitable at that point. So Putin may decide to not just target the United States, but major military bases across Europe as well. One significant target in the event of a nuclear conflict would be the Allied Air Command in Ramstein, Germany. This military installation plays a crucial role in leading NATO air and missile defense activities, including continuous air policing and the monitoring of alliance airspace. If Russia were planning a nuclear strike, this installation outside the United States would likely be on their list of targets. The Allied Air Command's primary responsibility includes monitoring the skies for incoming missiles, making them among the first to detect a potential nuclear attack. However, the time between detection and the actual impact of the warheads might be too short for effective evacuation. If a nuclear bomb were to detonate over the Allied Air Command base, approximately 30,000 lives would be lost in the immediate blast. Targeting Europe with nuclear weapons poses risks, as there is a possibility that some of the fallout could drift into Russia. However, if Russia launches its entire nuclear arsenal, the fallout becomes a secondary concern in the face of the broader catastrophic consequences. Similar to the potential targeting of major US cities, it's likely that Russia would aim its nuclear weapons at densely populated cities in Europe. London, with over 200 nuclear weapons in the United Kingdom, would undoubtedly be a prime target, putting the 8.8 million people living in the English capital at significant risk. If a nuclear warhead were to detonate over London, it would result in the complete destruction of iconic landmarks such as Parliament and Buckingham Palace, concentrated in the city centre. In the immediate aftermath, 1 million people would lose their lives, with an additional 2.3 million casualties caused by the shockwave in the moments following the blast. Only structures on the outskirts of the city would stand any chance of surviving the devastating impact. Similar to the scenarios discussed for other major urban areas like New York City, London would be engulfed in fires and any existing hospitals would be overwhelmed, assuming anyone could reach them and there were still staff alive to attend to the injured. Military and emergency personnel, spared from the attacks across the UK, would be mobilized to urban areas to provide assistance to survivors. Unfortunately, England and the surrounding regions would not escape the fallout, with most of the islands subjected to nuclear contamination. Coastal winds from the Atlantic could carry a significant portion of the radioactive particles into the North Sea, intensifying the challenges posed by nuclear fallout in the aftermath of such a devastating event. Regardless of where in the world it happens, the thought of Russian nuclear strikes is undeniably terrifying. Now let's consider an extreme situation. Where would a single nuclear strike cause the most casualties? In this alarming scenario, we turn our attention to one of the most densely populated cities globally. The Philippines is a crucial ally and defense partner of the United States, with Manila being its capital. It's not beyond the realm of possibility that Russia might target Manila with nuclear weapons. Manila is already one of the most densely populated cities, with 111,532 people per square mile, or 43,062 people per square kilometer in 2020. However, the real population density challenge lies in the broader metro area. While the city of Manila has around 1.8 million people, the Manila metro area is home to nearly 13.5 million people within its 239 square miles or 620 square kilometers. This translates to a population density of 56,485 people per square mile or 21,774 people per square kilometer.
Enormous. It's extraordinary to set eyes upon. So,
to put this in perspective, the fireball from an 800 kiloton nuclear explosion covers about 1 square mile. The extreme population density in Metro Manila accentuates the potential for catastrophic casualties from a single nuclear strike. When you think about how tightly packed a city and its surroundings are, things can spiral out of control very quickly. If a Russian nuclear bomb went off over Manila, it would instantly kill around 2.1 million people. The total casualties, including those injured, would be close to 5 million. The more crowded a city is, the more devastating a nuclear explosion becomes. However, there's another factor to consider. Not all of Russia's nuclear bombs are 800 kilotons. In fact, Russia detonated the Tsar bomber on October 30th, 1961. The largest nuclear bomb in history. This monstrous bomb had a yield of 50 megatons, making it over 5 times more powerful than the traditional nuclear warheads we've been talking about. Officially, it's said that the USSR only made 1 operational Tsar bomber and 2 prototypes, but this can't be confirmed, as there might be more hidden somewhere in Russia. It's important to note that Russia has several nuclear devices with yields between 1 and 50 megatons that it could use. But what if it dropped a bomb similar in scale to the Tsar bomber? What would that look like and what would happen? In this grim scenario, let's return to New York City. Russia has modified a Tupolev Tu-160 bomber to drop a massive nuclear bomb, similar in size to the Tsar bomber, right in the middle of Manhattan. When the bomb goes off, most of the island is instantly vaporized by the intense fireball. The fireball extends about 2.87 miles from the center, and the waters of the Hudson and East Rivers disappear immediately. What was once Manhattan and its surroundings becomes nothing more than a smoldering crater, turning the entire metropolis into a nightmarish scene. The destructive force of the blast causes heavy damage to buildings as far as 5.5 miles away. The iconic skyscrapers of New York City, which once reached over 1,000 feet into the sky, are now leveled like a barren desert. A towering mushroom cloud from the explosion reaches an astonishing height of 40 miles and can be seen from hundreds of miles away. Houses and older buildings up to 12.8 miles from the blast are knocked down, and the intense thermal radiation capable of causing severe burns is felt as far away as 37 miles. The aftermath paints a picture of widespread devastation, transforming the vibrant city into a landscape of ruin and suffering. Right after a 50-megaton nuclear bomb explodes, it's really bad. 7.6 million people die right away. But the sad truth is, it gets even worse. More people will die in the following days because of the lasting effects of radiation and the injuries from the blast. In total, around 12 million people are expected to be hurt by the nuclear explosion, showing just how far-reaching and devastating the damage is. It's a really tough situation with a lot of immediate and lasting consequences for a large number of people. Additionally, when a 50-megaton nuclear bomb goes off, it's not just about the immediate harm to people. The ground where the explosion happened stays contaminated with radiation for a long time, up to 5 years. This lingering radiation continues to be a danger to people's health and safety, adding to the long-lasting damage caused by such a powerful nuclear weapon. The immense level of destruction from a 50-megaton nuclear blast highlights how these weapons can cause unparalleled devastation very quickly, going beyond what regular weapons can do over a much longer time. The thought of a nuclear war is terrifying, and we all hope it never happens. If Russia were to attack with nuclear weapons, the US and its allies would respond, leading to devastating consequences for both sides. Predictions suggest an immediate death toll of nearly 100 million people, and the long-term impact of nuclear winter could lead to even more deaths. It's crucial for the world to unite and prevent such a catastrophic scenario for the safety of everyone.